History buffs, what is a commonly held misconception that drives you up the wall every time you hear it?
That Rosa Parks was just some nice old lady who wouldn't give up a bus seat. She was a political activist who meticulously planned that specific instance of civil protest. Edit: to clarify, my comment was not intended to be negative or derogatory toward Mrs. Parks or her contributions to racial activism in any way. I merely wanted to highlight the inconsistencies in how we learn history and how the narrative can shape our perceptions without us questioning anything. I think it is important, especially within the discipline of history, to seek out answers for ourselves and make our own determinations.
People didn't die at 30 to 40. The high infant mortality rate skews the average. If you could survive into your teen years, you had a pretty good chance of living into your senior years. Obviously, there are a lot of factors to consider, e.g., class, gender, occupation, where you lived, etc.
That people from the past were just less intelligent than modern people. Fact is, humans from even 15,000 years ago were just as intelligent as modern humans, intelligence being the ability to learn and apply knowledge. They just had different things to worry about and had not discovered everything that we know today. The whole of modern civilization is built on discoveries made thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. Our ancestors, starting with nothing but stone tools and basic survival skills, created agriculture, writing, mathematics, standardized language, the wheel, metallurgy, shipbuilding, architecture, trade routes spanning all of Afro-Eurasia, currency, banking, crossbreeding of animals and plants to create better strains, the list goes on. If I plucked a human baby from thousands of years ago, properly immunized it to modern diseases, and raised it as any other child today, you would be unable to tell the difference between them or any other child. Fact is, the only difference between us and our ancient ancestors is the discoveries, philosophies, technology and effort performed, created and understood by the hundreds of generations between us. Our ancient ancestors were simply smart in different ways because we only really learn what we have to. Ancient Polynesians literally memorized the night sky for navigating the innumerable islands of the Indo-Pacific and Oceania. Norse peoples built ships capable of sailing from Europe to America using only hand tools, wood, linen, nails and rope. Ancient East Asian cultures built massive temples out of wood using only precisely crafted wood joints and no nails. Rome built, Rome, with hand tools and hand-calculated math. Same can be said of the wonders of Egypt, India and Mesopotamia. Then there is Göbekli Tepe, an amazing structure of precisely placed monoliths, engraved walls and cobblestone paths built nearly 12,000 years ago. Which is nearly 6,000 years prior to our earliest records of advanced civilizations. We stand on the backs of thousands of years of knowledge painstakingly collected and handed down for millennia to us who have taken it and created wonders our ancestors would attribute to gods. Yet we ignore the gargantuan effort that our long-dead kin have contributed to our success and even view them with disdain. Calling them savages, ignorant and fools. Truly we are the ungrateful child looking down on the gracious teacher that our ancestors were. We are the summation of all of humanity, just another step in a long history of advancement, not a separate holy being above it or separate from it.
Medieval peasant food was bland. People seem to think peasants only ate bread and potatoes with no seasoning. In reality, while salt was indeed a luxury they often couldn't afford, they had access to plenty of herbs to flavor their food. They also had access to things like fish and other meats, so they weren't just eating bread, though it was an important staple of their diet. If you're interested in how a bunch of civilizations ate throughout history, check out Tasting History on YouTube. It's a great source of historical information and entertainment. Edit. Meant to include this originally, but as others have also stated, things like potatoes and tomatoes didn't exist in medieval Europe either. They're native to the Americas. So for most of history, the majority of the world didn't even know they existed.
During Paul Revere's midnight ride he did not shout "The British are coming." The mission depended on secrecy, so shouting loudly "The British are coming" kinda defeats the whole purpose. According to several sources, for example, eyewitness accounts, his warning was likely "the regulars are coming out" or some variation of that, and probably not loud enough to wake up a village, as I've seen in some media renditions. Edit. If people would like to know the most accurate information regarding what Paul Revere did, probably the most complete account is the letter Paul Revere sent to Jeremy Belknap, corresponding secretary of the Massachusetts Historical Society in 1798. Transcripts can be found online.
Deep breath. I've been studying the Titanic disaster for over 3 decades. Titanic comes up on Reddit a lot, which I love because how cool that my nerdy hobby interests so many people, but the amount of misconceptions is large. This is no one's fault, nor is it ignorance. Titanic had the lucky fortune to become a symbol very quickly, so very often what we think of as history is really folklore. That being said, here are the ones I see often. 1. There is enough evidence, good evidence, where we can say that William Murdoch most likely did shoot himself. The scene James Cameron shot is a direct recreation of witness testimony, multiple witnesses actually. There is a huge amount of first-hand and second-hand evidence that this happened. Why it's thought to be a myth and why James Cameron had to apologize is actually another interesting part of the story, but for the main question in all my research, I've yet to see a fact-based reason why we should think Will Murdoch was not a victim of suicide. 2. On the same note, yes, Charles Lightoller lowered early boats without filling them as he should have. It wasn't incompetence or ignorance, there were many reasons why this was the best course of action and it was practiced throughout the night. To add, Titanic's crew weren't incompetent or unprepared, they were, quite literally, the best of the best. 3. There were lifeboat drills. Multiple. Every night at 6 p.m. 4. The fourth funnel wasn't fake, it just served a slightly different purpose than the first 3. 5. Titanic was not speeding. 6. Boats were not filled by class. 7. Third class was not locked below, but some of them thought they were. This is actually pretty interesting in that every view of this situation is the correct one. To refer to Cameron again, his portrayal of this is correct depending on who you ask. It was miscommunication, not classism. 9. Coal fire damage not a thing and the evidence is just wrong. 10. The switch theory not only makes no sense, it is literally impossible. 11. Titanic wasn't a cruise ship. She was an ocean liner, smiley face. Many more of course, but these are the ones that pop up the most, smiley face.
That Neanderthals were monosyllabic brutes. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Their brains were bigger than ours and casts of the inside of their skulls show that they had all the same structures our brains had. Their tool making was comparable to any Homo sapiens took making, at least before the Great Leap Forward, and they lived in communities just like we did. We also regularly mated with them and had kids, which I really don't think we would if they were little more than quasi-gorillas.
Marie Antoinette's famous "let them eat cake or let them eat brioche." She literally never said it. She was 9 at the time and it was entirely made up.
That if you were a peasant you could marry whoever you wanted for love, and if you were a noble, royal or the like you could only marry for power during the medieval period. Higher class people could and did, though it wasn't common, marry for love, and most of the time peasant marriages were arranged for the same reason as noble ones were, to link two families together. You very rarely got to marry who you liked, it was usually who your parents liked. Also, prima nocta has, as far as I know, was never actually being recorded as a thing.
Only around 40% of colonists supported the American Revolution. Another 40% was indifferent, and about 20% sided with the British. Most Americans think that it was the vast majority who wanted independence.
I have had way too many of my university students tell me that Lincoln owned slaves. Edit. Uh-oh, the cult of Lincoln has arrived. Listen guys, Lincoln was awesome in many ways and I'm personally a fan of the guy, but he was not a hardcore abolitionist like the great emancipator myth claims. Lincoln had his flaws and shortcomings just like everyone else.
Asian people brought hot, spicy food to Europe. In fact, Europeans, Portuguese, brought chilies from the New World to Asia. Before that, Asian food could be lavishly spiced and flavored but not hot in the way a lot of it is now. Also, before the European discovery of the Americas, there was no tomato in Italian food, no potatoes in North European food, and no sweet corn stuck in people's teeth worldwide.
Louis Michel Le Pelletier cast the single vote that sentenced Louis XVI. Actually, the vote was a pretty clear majority in favor of execution.
That AD means after death.
That Vikings were an ethnicity.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.